you're watching The History of Foundation, Part 2. In Part 1 of The History of Foundation, we covered what foundation was made of and how it was used from ancient Greece through to the Tudor dynasty. In this edition, we're going to cover foundation that looks more like what we're used to wearing today. So let's start in Germany in the 1860s. In the 1860s, there was a stage actor in Germany named Carl Baudin who was looking for a way to make the line of demarcation from his wig to his forehead not look so obvious. By mixing up ingredients such as talc with colored pigments and lard, he invented what was known as grease paint. It was great for stage, and not too different from the theatrical makeup being used today, but it wasn't very lifelike when looked at up close, which led to another foundation invention. In 1914, a cosmetician and wig maker named Max Factor noticed a need for makeup that didn't look cakey on film, and created what he called flexible grease paint, which was a thinner consistency and better suited to the needs of the film industry. But his next foundation is what changed the foundation game forever. In 1935, while once again experimenting with a way to make the actresses of the day look even more flawless, he created what's known as pancake makeup. If you aren't familiar with it, it was essentially a type of pressed powder that you applied with a damp sponge. And although it was invented for the silver screen, women went wild over it, wanting to know what was being used to make the actor's skin look so flawless. And within 3 years, Max Factor's pancake makeup was patented and successfully launched to the public, where it became one of the fastest-selling makeup products of all time. Women often use this pancake makeup in a shade deeper than their natural skin tone to give their complexion a sun-kissed look. So now let's take a quick look at the foundation trends that were popular after pancake makeup hit the mass market. In the 1950s, pancake was still very popular, but now women also had the option of liquid and cream formulas as well. At this time, women started applying foundation as well as putting a powder on top of it, before moving on to the big makeup trends of the time, which were red lips and full eyebrows. The 1960s. Think Jackie Kennedy, Diana Ross, and Twiggy. In this decade, many women wore foundation that matched their skin tone with a contour beneath the cheekbones, and then accentuated the eyes with heavy liner and false eyelashes. This is also the decade where we start to see companies manufacture slightly deeper shades of foundation. But don't be mistaken, this wasn't the time of foundation shade inclusivity just yet. The 1970s. The 1970s was an interesting decade in terms of beauty. As with all beauty trends, it was influenced by what was happening culturally. The feminist movement was a huge part of the 70s, and along with that came a drop in cosmetic sales, as many women just stopped wearing it, being of the opinion that it was another way in which women were objectified and encouraged to look a certain way for men. Cosmetic companies were forced to think outside the box, leading to an explosion of natural-looking makeup products. The barely there foundation look soared in popularity, and was used to give the skin a healthy sheen versus a flawless, doll-like complexion of years past. However, the 70s was also the era of disco, which was all about flash and bright-colored eye makeup. For the most part, though, the foundation that accompanied these flashy looks still remained light and dewy. This was also the decade when we started to see a bit more inclusion in makeup for women of color. Advertisers started using more African American women in their beauty advertisements. And in 1973, Eunice Johnson created Fashion Fair, a cosmetics company created specifically for women of color, which is still successfully running today. Now we're in the 1980s, which was all about glam and excess, and the makeup was no exception. Colored eyeshadow, unplucked eyebrows, and bright lips were paired with a thick, matte liquid foundation, usually a shade or two lighter than your natural skin tone, upon which one would use their blush to contour their cheeks. Think of it as the anti-natural look. And that brings us to the neutral 90s, not to be mistaken for the natural 90s. The makeup colors were neutral, but there was lots of it. Shades of tan and brown were used on the lips, eyes, and skin. And we were back once again to women using foundation to make their skin look sun-kissed and bronze. This is also the decade when Bobbi Brown Cosmetics began. She created her famous yellow-based foundation sticks, believing that most women have yellow tones in their skin and therefore would work well on a wide variety of skin tones. And now, here we are in the 21st century, where foundation-wise, anything goes. We have matte formulas, dewy formulas, full coverage, barely there, tinted moisturizers, and what seems like a new foundation launch every couple of weeks, which personally, I love. And social media has been a big part of that. Within the past few years, there's been a demand from foundation wearers for a more inclusive shade range, which we're really starting to see a lot of companies embrace. Also, having a community of makeup lovers who share information, ideas, and reviews has made for some really educated consumers as well. And to their credit, foundation companies have taken note and have really upped their foundation game, in my opinion. Thanks for watching the History of Foundation Part 2. And as always, thanks for supporting this channel.